And that's the whole point. We have been using the wrong algorithms for about 100 years. We've been working off, and I shouldn't say it here because I'm sure Edward Thorndike is listening somewhere in the rooms, because 100 years ago, Edward Thorndike, the education psychologist, with his puzzle box and his hungry cat, came up with the law of effect, which is basically behaviorism, which is, again, ties in with Ebbinghaus and the idea that memory is important. We know memory is important, but we also know that working memory is a limited space. That's George Miller's paper, 1956, where the magical number 7 plus or minus 2, it's why your telephone number is 10 digits, because that's the limitation of our working memory space. We, as teachers and parents, know how to grow your working memory. And if we design and build our classes properly, every time the students will come to your class, they'll grow their working memory space. They'll reduce their amygdala, which you don't want to be. An amygdala is your fear factor and your emotional negative space. 80%, somebody said it earlier on this morning, I think it was Kaufman, he said 80% is reactive. That's where we want to go. That's because we've evolved that way for the last 2 million years. We, by understanding how the brain works, can modulate that. And the point is that, and you read this in our book, how we do it, and these are the pieces that you see in that model right in front of you. This is Ebbinghaus's model. Watch what happens when we do it. We introduced Miller and Hebb. Hebb was the famous neuroscientist who did neurons that fire together, wire together. Then we have initial thoughts, which you just did. We had the reflect and the report out, or the revised thinking and report out. These are the new 3 R's. In the last century, 3 R's were reading, writing, and arithmetic. Today it's reflect, revised thinking, and report out. You guys just did that. And once you get to that place, you end up with cognitive rehearsal. That's the name of the sheet you're working on, because you heard the voice here, the voice here, the voice there, the voice over here. The same information, but it's a different voice, and it's beginning to sink in that, oh, we really need to know what this model is about. We need to know what memory is about. And then we get to metacognition. We're thinking about our thinking, and then agency. When we get to agency, we've got liftoff. That means that the teacher can sit back and do nothing, and the students are working with habituation, intrinsic motivation, as opposed to being rewarded with a grade. But intrinsic is, I love to do this because it's meaningful to me, and that's the value of it. Habits of mind begin to happen. Adaptive expertise, which is very important to understand the difference between routine expertise and adaptive expertise. It's a whole class we teach on that. And then when people can contribute, as opposed to sit back and be receptive, you've got transfer. You talk about transfer, near and far transfer. That's when that begins to happen. And finally, you get fulfillment and limitless potential. In other words, you've found the potential that Mr. Kaufman was talking about earlier in your classrooms every single day. And at that point, we're off the charts. Ebbinghaus is down there, we're up here. This, in other words, our assessment modules don't even capture what we have, because, and we have to figure this out. Company, we had to create new methodologies for assessing the workers because they were off there was a ceiling effect. We had to get up to where they were creating new information, they were generative, generating new ideas, they were contributive, they were collaborative, all the things that you want 21st century skills. And that means that you've got mental models that are successful and intentionality. And that's what we create with this idea of continuous next, which is a Gartner term that we just learned. And how we do that? Well, memory is a part of it, but not the biggest part. And then the synaptic synthesis is the central piece for me, where we encode concepts, emotions, and experiences with long-term potentiation. Long-term potentiation is something that happens up here. It's in the brain. If you're not thinking about that when you teach every day, then you're not understanding how students learn. Look up long-term potentiation. You'll get all this stuff on our website. And then the key courses, it's measurable, replicable, and sustainable. Every single week you can do this.